that she has her name right there. So you can say Katelynn Schmidt and then write Shemeketa. Katelynn, as you know, was a student last year, and she's going to tell us about her first year at Shemeketa. She has learned some things, and she asked to pass this advice on to you, and I'm very thankful for her doing this. You are being recorded, so anything you say will be recorded, and your image, if you decide to present your image on the screen, will be recorded. Okay?
So my name is Katelynn Schmidt. I did graduate this past year in 2020. My pronouns are she, her, and this is now my second term at Shemeketa. And while the counselors at Cascade and other resources did help prep me, I figured out that once I was in the door and like going through the classes, there were a lot of things that I had to learn via word of mouth, having to track down college advisors, talking to people who graduated 5 years ago. So things like that. So I'm sharing some of the advice that I've gotten. Hang on, I'm starting to screen share. There we go. Can you all see my screen? If someone could say yes, that'd be brilliant.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, so all this is just resources, some that the counselors already provide you, others that I've had to figure out along the way. So the very beginning of the process is going to be you have to apply. So the Shemeketa website is a little, it's not messy, it's just there's a lot. So you have to file through things. So when you do click this link, if you want the PowerPoint, just email me, let me know. I'll gladly share it with you. But you just hit that link, or you go to the Shemeketa website, you click admissions and then how to enroll. And from there, it gives you a step-by-step on how to actually go through the application process. The counselors at Cascade can help you with this. Then you're going to want to apply as soon as possible just to get it out of the way.
Hey, Katelynn. Would you, when we're done with this, would you share this with me, and then I'll make a copy and I'll just put it on their Google Classroom and I'll give it to the counselors?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
All right. Then scholarships. So normally I would recommend the Oregon Promise. But since I'm not sure what your guys' graduation year is, I believe Oregon Promise for the 2020 and the 2021 school year, it's been reduced. So you have to have a certain income requirement and things like that I am personally not aware of. I'm only aware of the old rules. So you'll need to contact your counselors about that specifically. But if you have a 3.5 GPA or higher, I know for a fact you can apply for Shemeketa Scholars. So what Shemeketa Scholars does cover is going to be most of your tuition. It will not cover your textbooks or your class fees. So textbooks are pretty obvious, straightforward, but class fees, say for example, well, I'm taking a couple horticulture classes. Now, I don't need to go out and buy these supplies, but the different varieties of plants, the equipment, like gardening pruners, things like that, has to be supplied to me. So those fees are fees that go to the teachers to turn around and provide those supplies for us. So my average personal cost after Shemeketa Scholars, just not the tuition, but just the class fees, is $500 a term. So right now, my first year college will cost me about $1,500. Then another thing about Shemeketa Scholars is you need to keep a certain GPA point every trimester. I believe it's a 3.25. As long as you can keep that for every trimester, it'll be renewed for the next one. Then another issue is knowing what you want to do. So for me, I knew since junior year that I wanted to be a secondary or a high school ag teacher. Now, if you're not quite sure and your path isn't that specific, that is where you're going to want to talk to the counselors at school. Or if you still aren't sure by the time you get to college, really talk to your college advisors to figure out what path you should go down. For example, if you're interested in forestry, see what classes you should be taking to gear you towards that. This also is extremely important to figure out what degree path you're going on, because each degree path has different requirements. My personal degree path is the AAOT, which is the transfer degree that teachers get. So I have my own set of requirements that I have to fulfill as compared to someone who's getting a science degree. So this is where, again, you're going to want to talk to someone who is a counselor either at Cascade or at Schmidt. Then if you are not interested in getting a transfer degree, please note that Schmidt also has different certificates for various industries as well. One of the newer ones is like the horticulture certificate. I'm not entirely sure what those entail, but I know that these will help get you into prime positions like for greenhouse management operations, things like that that don't necessarily require a degree, but do require some levels of certification. College advisors. This is where I slammed into a wall my first term. So to spare you the details, my college advisor didn't set me up on the right track. I was put on the wrong degree path and I was floating around for a little bit, a little confused. So in order to make sure you're getting the right answers, make sure you annoy your college advisors. It's their job to talk to you, to respond to you, to help you. So basically making sure that they're responding, that they're, giving you the answers that you need. If you have to clarify with them. But if you wind up in a situation like in my case where my college advisor just wasn't helping me in the way I needed, don't be afraid to ask for a new college advisor or seek out help from a new college advisor. Schmidt has about 7 of them with various degrees of knowledge in different fields. I just got a new college advisor who knows more about OSU and knows more about teaching. So now I'm more on the right track and I'm starting to learn what classes I should be taking. So just to make sure that you are still on top of communicating with your college advisors, don't be afraid to double check, to follow up, to even call them if need be, if a phone number is provided. Because it's really critical. In college, you'll hear this a bunch. They say they don't hold your hand. It's not even that. They basically don't give you Google Maps. They give you a roughly drawn map. And you have to ask people along the way, hey, what street is this? Am I going the right way? So it's really important that you make sure that you're willing to reach out to those people who will give you guidance. Catalogs. So I knew college advisors existed. I had no clue what a catalog was. So a catalog is based off of your degree requirement. So let's take my degree path, for example, the AAOT. Well, there is a catalog every school year for it. So there are requirements you have to fulfill that year for that certain degree. So basically, it's like a list of your sophomore or junior or even senior year classes, the requirements. So it's basically like that, except there's multiple of them, and it depends on your degree path. This is why your degree path is so important, to make sure that you're on track and using that scholarship money or your own out-of-pocket money wisely. So you need to make sure, check in with your college advisor. That is how they are important to this process. Making sure that you're sticking with the correct catalog. Asking if there's any required classes that would help boost and benefit you for greater knowledge. Communication. So communication is going to be big throughout college, from my experience so far. I know that within high school, I'd email my teachers quite a bit. But with college, especially remote, you need to not be afraid to ask questions. So with college, especially since you're more free, you're more loose, I don't think any of my professors take attendance. It's one of those things where you need to actively communicate with them. If you miss a presentation, if something comes up, let's say I have a family medical emergency on the day of my horticulture labs, which are on Tuesday. It is vital to communicate with that professor, hopefully before, but absolutely at least after, so that makes sure that they can accommodate you, because they can't read your mind. They're running 3 classes a day plus, so communicating with them is so important. Then, down below, do not fear the double email. Sometimes you have to follow up with them 2 or 3 days later, remind them that your email exists in their inbox. Because like I said, they're teaching hundreds of students every day, especially now that we're remote, their inbox is going to be full. That doesn't mean don't be afraid of emailing them. It means make sure that your voice is heard and recognized. So they won't find it annoying. They'll, especially if the professor is a little bit more forgetful, it's a really helpful tool to make sure your communication is solid. So things to absolutely avoid, especially right now in the scope of education through COVID, going it alone. Do not. Remember how I said that college is like a roughly drawn map and you have to ask for help along the way? If you go it alone, I guarantee you, you are going to end up on the wrong side of the city in a place where, you don't recognize anything. So make sure you are reaching out, whether that is to people you personally know who have gone through college, your college counselors, the advisors, things like that. Even if you have to, go back and reach out to one of the high school counselors when you're in college, make sure you are reaching out. Don't take things as face value, meaning don't take what one person says about college and run with it. Make sure that you're getting multiple answers that correlate from multiple people. What I mean by that is there is just this myth that you always have to buy your college textbooks. And that's what I walked into Schmidt thinking. That, you can get them pre-used, but that's it. I just found out this term that we have a textbook library. So it's things like that, making sure you're double checking everything, because there could be something, a tool out there to help you that you didn't know existed. Forgetting to pay your term balance is another issue. I personally have never run into it, but it is something that I know you can easily forget. So before your term starts, that's when there's a small part in my Schmidt you have to go to pay your term balance. I won't get into great detail right now, but it's so easy to forget. So making sure that you're making payments on time, super important, because it's hard to shift from an education that's free to an education that will cost you something and forgetting it because it's structured quite similarly. So don't forget your payments. Another thing is don't forget about scholarships. While granted senior year and junior year of high school, it is so important to try to qualify for scholarships and apply for them. Just know that you can also find scholarships while you're at Schmidt or in your first or second years of college. That is big. So making sure that you're keeping your eyes and ears open. Sorry if my screen just moved. My dog is right next to me. But making sure that you are utilizing all those resources, because I know in high school I personally didn't work. So the thought of spending 5 hours for $2,000 seemed a little ridiculous. But now that I am working full-time in the summers, part-time throughout school, I realize how much that is. $2,000 is about 2/3 of what I make in the summer. So for 5 hours versus, I don't even know how many hours, 160 hours of work. So just remembering that scholarships are valid and they are important. Habits you need to get into. Schedule your classes early. About the 7th or 8th week of the term you're currently in, the school will release the catalog for the class catalog for the next term, and you can start registering. The reasons why this is so important is, especially if you work like me, you can fill in your schedule the way you want it. Meaning that you won't have to look for classes that have spots that are empty and try to cram it all together. You'll be able to choose classes from a range of times. Then you have better chances of getting your books checked out from the textbook library that I brought up earlier. Because even though a lot of students don't know about it, there's enough to where there's still a competition to get the books, especially if you're taking a main class. That is super common and everyone takes. So once you're registered and making sure your time slots fit correctly with whatever else you have going on, like work or family stuff, make sure you get your stuff checked out. Sorry, my cat is now coming to accost me. So it also saves you money and stress in the long run. So going back to those other 2 points, come here, buddy. But basically, it saves you money because when you borrow the textbooks, they charge you absolutely nothing, as long as you return them in good condition. And it saves you stress from trying to make sure that your schedule fits together, because some classes have lectures and then labs on different days at different times. Another thing that has helped me, especially with this term, is getting your stuff done ahead of schedule. If your professor posts things ahead of time, get it done as quickly as you can. Not saying you do it poorly, but if you can get ahead, make sure you get ahead. The reason why I say this is, if you're ahead and a test pops up, you have more time to study. You have more time to prepare and make sure that you're going to do well on those tests that are oftentimes worth more points. And then lastly, make sure you print the syllabus for each class and go over it with a highlighter. For example, some professors won't grade certain things you need to do in order to prep yourself for the quiz. Specifically in my horticulture class, my professor doesn't have the readings listed as an assignment because they're not graded. But the only place to find out where the weekly readings are is the syllabus. The syllabus will also keep you on track of the assignments, upcoming labs, tests, quizzes, and midterms. Those are all super important. So if you're not necessarily someone to transfer all this into a planner, I don't transfer all this into a planner because it's a lot of moving parts for 3 or 4 classes at a time. Having those syllabuses printed is crucial. So that is the end of my presentation.